Hi everyone, Greg Wade here. Today we're going to make some oat porridge dinner rolls and serve them with some whipped honey cinnamon butter. Let's get started. All right, the first step to make our dinner rolls is to make a pre-ferment. So this is going to be a way of pre-fermenting our flour to build flavor and structure before we make the actual rolls themselves. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take 45 grams of water, we have 45 grams of flour, and I'm going to take a pinch of dry yeast. If I had to guess, it would be less than 1/8 of a teaspoon, and add it to the flour. And then I'm just going to mix this by hand until it's all incorporated. No dry spots of flour, and all the yeast is dissolved as well. And I'm going to let this sit at room temperature covered for about 12 hours. 12 to 18 hours is totally fine. So I usually do this the night before making the rolls. So the next step in making our oat dinner rolls is to cook the porridge. Anytime I'm using a non-glutinous grain like oats or corn, I do like to cook the grain first, and I do that by having 3 parts water to 1 part grain. So for this, I'm going to have 105 grams of water into a pot. I'm going to add 35 grams of rolled oats. I'm going to add just a pinch of salt to make sure that these are seasoned properly before they go into our bread. And I'm going to cook them over medium-high heat until they're thick. This should just take a few minutes. So you do want to make sure that the oats are cooked all the way through. And what is happening here is you're pre-gelatinizing the starches in the oats. So not only does this cook them, but it prevents them from sucking up more moisture out of your bread. And it's going to retain a lot more moisture and be a lot softer as an end product by adding this to your dinner rolls. So this is a really strong method for any time you want something to stay really soft and moist. Okay, so our oats have come up to a boil, and they've started to thicken, and you do want to cook the oats just for a couple minutes past this point, just to make sure that all of the starches are gelatinized. And you do want to be stirring frequently or consistently to make sure that you're not scorching the oats in the pan. Some people like to toast their oats. I prefer not. I don't particularly care for the flavor. But if you wanted to add kind of a deeper flavor, you could toast the oats. But for me, I prefer the untoasted, so I make sure to stir my oats the entire time that they're cooking. You want to do this with enough time to let the oat porridge cool before you are actually going to make your bread. So you can do this the night before. You can do this 20, 30 minutes before you mix your bread. If you cook it the night before, you'll store it in the fridge and then pull it out to room temperature about an hour before you actually want to make your bread. So this looks good to me. So I'm going to just pour them into a dish and allow them to come to room temperature, and then we can mix our bread dough. Okay, so we're ready to mix our bread. We've got our pre-ferment that we made last night. We can tell that it's ready because it's risen. It's got a lot of bubbles on the very top of it. If you smell it, you can smell kind of a yeasty aroma. Not particularly sour because this is not sourdough. We're using commercial yeast for this. But you can smell some good organic acids that make up the good flavors of bread. Our porridge has cooled to room temperature. And then I've got here 200 grams of bread flour. I have 80 grams of milk, 50 grams of butter, 25 grams of honey, 7 grams of salt, and about 1 gram of dry yeast. So all of this is just going to go into the bowl of the mixer. I always start with wet ingredients, and then my yeast goes on top of it to allow it to dissolve a little bit. Okay, I will then add our honey. and then all of the pre-ferment that you can. Don't worry about if there's like a little bit left on the bowl for some of these things. That's okay. It's not going to make or break you. Your cooked oats, the flour, soft butter, make sure that your butter is soft, and your salt goes right in. Okay? So we are going to turn this on. And allow it to incorporate all of the dry ingredients. Okay, so all my dry ingredients are incorporated. Now I'm going to turn it up and then mix it for probably another 7 or 8 minutes until a smooth and shiny dough forms. Okay, so our dough has been mixing for about 8 minutes, and it is really coming together and looking a lot stronger. So what I'm going to do to test it is I'm going to kind of pull at it, and really it has a lot of strength as I pull at this. So this for me is fine. It could be a little bit smoother, but this will be just fine. So I'm going to take it from the bowl, and I'm going to gently round it a little bit and place it into a proofing bowl, and then we're just going to cover this and let it ferment in a warm area, 70, 75 degrees Fahrenheit for about an hour. It should about double in size, and then we will portion it. So our dough has been proofing at room temperature for about an hour and a half. And it's ready to shape. So it's really nicely risen. You can feel a lot of air in there. And it's about doubled in size. So what I'm going to do is lightly dust a work surface and then remove the dough from the bowl. A little bit more flour on top of it to work with it, and a little bit of flour where I'm going to be placing the portions. I always like working sequentially from one side to the other. I have the dough on my right side because I'm right-handed, and that's the way that I cut. And I'm going to be shooting for about 50-gram portions. Okay, so I cut, and then I weigh, and then I place them nicely on the next side so I'm able to keep everything really nice and organized. And you can eyeball this if you want. You would just be shooting for 12 equal portions. But the best way to do this is definitely to weigh them. That way you know that they're all the same. Okay, I just got a little bit left. I'm going to divide that up a little bit. Good. So my dough is portioned. Now we're going to round these into the pan. Okay, we're ready to round our rolls and place them in the pan. We want to prep the pan first. So I got the base of the Challenger pan. I'm going to coat it in pan spray to make sure that the rolls don't stick. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the floured side of the roll and have it in my hand. And then on a non-floured work surface, I'm going to round it. I'm going to push up with the heel of my hand. And as you can see, it clings to the table. And I'm going to come around with the knife of my hand, pushing it to the left, pull down with my fingertips, and finish it off with the thumb pushing back to the right. So when you put it all together, it's kind of this rounding motion that tightens the outer layer of gluten around the rest of it. So it ends up being very tight and round. We're going to go 3 by 4 in the pan. So again, that motion forward, to the left, down, and then to the right with your thumb, okay? And as you do that smoothly, then it becomes a nice round roll. Okay, you can do it with both hands. And you do want to place these close enough together in the pan that when they double in size that they will be touching each other, because then we will have our pull-apart rolls. Okay. I do also have flour at the top of my workstation because if I feel that the dough is sticking to my hand, I'll dip my hand in flour just to coat it and make sure that the bread doesn't tear. So now I've got these arranged in my pan nicely, such as this, and I'm going to put the lid on over the rolls and allow them to proof at room temperature for about an hour and a half or until they double in size. But the lid is going to prevent them from drying out while they do that. So about an hour and a half at room temperature, and then we'll be ready to bake them. All right, our rolls have been proofing at room temperature for about an hour, hour and a half, and we're going to see how they're doing. They're looking great. They are really nicely risen. For pull-apart buns, you do actually want them to be touching as they are here. Otherwise, you're not really going to be pulling them apart, right? That's why they're called pull-apart buns. I also have an egg wash prepared here, and I'm just going to brush over the top of each roll. You can kind of add some character with your egg wash choice, because if you use whole egg and water, what you're going to do is add shine, as well as a little bit of firm texture from the egg white protein. If you want shine and a really crisp crust, you can use egg whites and water. And then if you want to keep something very soft, you would use egg yolk and something like milk or cream, and all of that extra fat, while still adding the shine from the egg, the extra fat does keep the bread really, really nice and soft. So what I actually have here is egg yolk and just a splash of water to thin it out. So some shine and then some softness. So just egg wash over the tops nicely, and then place this into a 375-degree oven for probably about 20 minutes or until they're really nicely golden brown. So I thought it'd be nice to serve the rolls with a little bit of whipped honey butter, and we're going to add a little bit of cinnamon to it. So I've got 110 grams of soft butter that I'm going to add to the bowl of the mixer here. I have 30 grams of honey. I'm just going to drizzle it on there. About 2 grams of cinnamon, and then a little pinch of salt. Okay, so all of this is to taste. So if you like your want your butter to be a little bit sweeter, you'll add a little bit more honey, but not necessary, that sort of thing. Okay. Turn this up. Okay, so that's really it. So I'll take the beaters off and then take the butter out and put it into my serving dish. So it's really nice, it's really soft. Gained a little bit of air from whipping it. Okay, and just into the dish such as that. All right, so our rolls have been baking in a 375-degree oven for about 20 minutes. So they're probably ready. Let's take a look. All right, these look really nice. They've really risen in the oven. They're really nice and golden because of that egg wash that we put on there, and really nice and uniform. So let's let these cool for a little bit before we serve them with our whipped honey butter. All right, so we've got our oat porridge dinner rolls, and then we've got our whipped honey cinnamon butter. Let's tear into it while they're still just a little bit warm, and you can see they're really soft and squishy, and that's just great. A little bit of steam's coming out of them. It's the perfect way to enjoy this sort of bread. Spread it with like a little bit of the butter, maybe a bit of the butter, right? And let's give it a shot. So incredibly soft, incredibly moist from cooking the oats first and then adding them in. Some sweetness from the honey and then accentuated with that cinnamon honey butter. This is just a huge win. I think that you guys are really going to enjoy these ones.